Well, good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Alberta First Pension Plan online town hall. Every second week, we present and discuss the benefits of an Alberta pension plan. My name is Kerry Lambert, host of the Chris and Kerry Show, and I'll be your host for this evening's town hall. Alberta First Pension Plan is a grassroots initiative of concerned Albertans who want to educate all Albertans on the benefits of an Alberta pension plan. Our goal is to collect 270,000 names and contact information. And once that is done, we will begin to collect signatures within a 90-day window and present it to our Alberta provincial government and initiate a referendum on an Alberta pension plan. And then you, Albertans, get to choose whether you want an Alberta pension plan or not. We are not affiliated with any political party or lobbyist group. And actually, I'm going to stand up and say that again. We are not affiliated with any political party or pension or lobbyist group. That's important to note because I know on social media it's basically saying we're being funded by the UCP as well as other groups. And we are not. We rely on donations and volunteers to get our message of an Alberta pension plan out to everyone. Please consider volunteering and donating. This is truly a grassroots movement and we need help doing that. And to find out more, please go to our website. It is at albertafirstpension.ca. And you can always send us a note and ask how you can get involved at info@albertafirstpension.ca as well. I'm just going to hide all that for a second. Tonight's topic is the media. The media and the Alberta Pension Plan. In response to a recommendation by the Fair Deal panel, the Alberta Treasury Board and Finance contracted LifeWorks to prepare an analysis of the costs, benefits, and structure of a potential Alberta pension plan. When the LifeWorks report came out in August 2023, there was a lot of biased messaging from mainstream media saying, this was a horrible idea. Alberta won't be able to do this. And it was terrible for all Canadians. There were multiple news stories last fall that got traction that this was a bad idea, despite any real digging into what an Alberta pension plan would be like for Albertans. However, we've been educating Albertans on the benefits of an Alberta pension plan ever since. We've had meetings across the province since February of 2024, and we're still doing meetings. The media has been fairly quiet this year about these meetings, and I think they're awaiting the magic number like us from the federal government and the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board. That calculation is as high as $334 billion to a modest $150 to $180 billion. This is good for anyone in Alberta. And even if we didn't get any money back from the Alberta Pension Plan, we'd still be better off since right now we over contribute $3 to $5 billion every year, which is more than enough to start and contribute our own pension plan. I'd like to go through some of the media reports and about the Alberta Pension Plan and have our experts make comments. We have our experts tonight, Mitch Sylvestre, who's head of the Alberta First Pension Plan, and I believe Tanner Hnidey will be joining us a little bit later. This is a live town hall, so we encourage you to ask questions and make comments throughout this presentation. Just put 3 question marks before your questions so it'll be flagged. And if you can, please share. And with that, I will bring on Mitch right now. Hello, Mr. Sylvestre. How are you?
Gary, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
I was just listening to your preamble there. It would sure be awesome if the UCP was funding us, actually, to tell you the truth. That would make life somewhat easier, quite a bit easier, actually, to tell you the truth. I think it would be fantastic because it's actually, I think, in their best interest to fund us.
Absolutely.
They don't want to do the work. We're doing the work already, so and we know the facts.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a no-brainer that this come to Alberta. But you know, the only advantage to leaving it with the CPP is that they print money. So if they ever short, they can print some more. But that'd be the only advantage.
No, that's true too. You know, we've been doing these. This is our 9th episode, so 10 episodes. We're going to try and do this one more Tuesday, October 29th, and that kind of leads up to the UCP AGM, the annual general meeting of the UCP. And we want to basically talk a little bit more about, you know, we've covered so many topics. As a matter of fact, I think we've now exhausted most of the topics that we can talk about in terms of the pension plan, right? We've talked about what is the number, how did LifeWorks get the number, or you know, what people are out there saying in Canada. What were the benefits of actually having our own pension plan here? What are the numbers associated with businesses and people putting in their own money into the pension plan? How much we're receiving after the fact? I really think we lost a lot of the conversation. We not. I'm pretty sure we have. I think he's frozen.
Mhm.
But
So I
what
just
else-
lost you there. You broke up a little bit. Were you asking me a question?
I was just asking you, like, what I think we have exhausted a lot of the questions that we wanted to ask, or basically go through with this series. But one of the things that keeps coming up all the time is, well, I saw on mainstream media, I saw on CBC this report, I saw on CTV this report, I saw on Global this report, I've read in the newspaper this report. And so I took it amongst myself to go, okay, let's see exactly what is going on out there, what is being said, and not only through mainstream media but social media. But I think social media is its own thing, really, right? Because it's you get people that will have anonymous accounts, and they'll just go and start spewing misinformation. So I did want to go through and talk a little bit about what some of the mainstream media stories were, and even going through them last year. I'm just going to call up something here for a second, just to give you an idea how to even go ahead and search this. So I'm just going to call up, just on YouTube as an example. All I did was punch in Alberta Pension Plan. So if you do that, chances are you'll get the exact same list that I'm looking at right here. There's we've actually talked about this particular video from CBC. This was 11 months ago. We see another one from 1 year ago, 10 months ago, 1 year ago. They're all fairly old, right? Nothing really has come out. I believe there was a couple of articles in May of last year. And so what really sparked my interest in all this is just doing a search right now on the Alberta Pension Plan and then news media. And then, I found out that there was something here on September 12th. So I went and took a look at that. And look at that. It's a CBC article, and it says, Daniel Smith says Alberta Pension Plan estimate from the feds will spur hard questions. Okay. So we go through that, and then, you know what, I'm going to look at something else. So I go back, and then I look at CTV, and I look at CTV, different news organization. Smith says Alberta Pension Plan estimate from the feds will spur hard questions. Didn't I just say that? I think I said that with CBC. Let me just go back. I did say that with CBC. Okay. Well, let's go to Global, because Global's got to be having their own thing here. Daniel Smith says an Alberta Pension Plan estimate from the feds will spur hard questions. Isn't that a little weird?
Well,
3 different news sources, and they all say exactly the same thing from Lisa Johnson at the Canadian Press. So that's our broadcast. Well, let's go and look at, say, what's on the Calgary Herald. Smith says an Alberta Pension Plan estimate from the feds will spur hard questions.
insane.
So what I'm actually seeing is that they really don't have a lot of stuff to talk about. So instead, with our federal government, the way that they've minimized how mainstream media is actually getting paid, and basically just saying, you know what, we can't afford any local reporters anymore working for the Calgary Herald or Vancouver Sun, or trust me, I've looked, Vancouver Sun, the Montreal Gazette, the Toronto Star, they all say exactly the same thing. So what they've basically done is just taken that one story and propagated it across the country. So I find that to be really intriguing, because no one out there other than Lisa Johnson, obviously, great job on this report, Lisa, because everyone picked it up. All right. So having said all that, let's actually watch the Global News report here. So I want you to those open. So you have to excuse me for a second. I put this back here. And we're just going to listen to what the media report says. Again, this is from September. Well, this one's September 13th of this year. This is as close to now as we can possibly see. So let's just see what happens.
It's Ottawa's response to a potential pension split.
This has never happened before. That's why it's going to be really, really important to have a calm, fact-based conversation.
At the core of that conversation, how much the Alberta government could get from the Canada Pension Plan if it follows through in its pitch to start its own retirement fund. A report commissioned by Premier Daniel Smith says Alberta could get over $330 billion, but that figure is in dispute.
Do you think that is a realistic number that the pension plan could potentially have to give to Alberta if they left?
No, I do not.
To give a federal dollar figure, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announcing the chief federal actuary will review the pension legislation, which does allow any province to leave the fund. The Alberta Finance Minister promising that will only happen if Albertans vote to do so in a referendum. But the terms of a vote and numerous other issues like pension portability concerning Alberta businesses.
We can't risk that as a country. We need to be able to be competitive, and uncertainty does not keep us competitive. You are better off sharing risk with a bigger pool of capital than trying to go it alone.
But it's not just business groups in the federal government. Even Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and NDP premiers don't want Alberta to leave the CPP.
We believe it's a good system. We think it's effective for British Columbians and for Canadians as a whole.
The other topic discussed at the virtual meeting, the carbon tax, with a number of provinces.
We need to get into the carbon tax on this thing. But what I just that this particular story is what was launched across Canada. Everybody in Canada, if you watched Global, if you watched CBC, they had a very similar sort of story with it. That's the way we're getting our news right now. And to me, that is a whole different story outside of the pension plan. But it's good to show that that is exactly where your hard-earned Canadian dollars are going. So if you're putting those Canadian dollars into your pension plan and calling it your own pension plan, and that is the money that you put in, that also is being funded through the news outlets. They're basically put fuel in that fire for that. So, Mitch, do you have any questions? You didn't even know that I was going to present that today. So,
no, but you know, it's fairly consistent with what they've been doing for 3 years since COVID. So what they've done is they've basically announced the fact that they're not going to give Alberta $334 billion because that's what's actually due to them. That's what's due to Alberta. So what they've done is they're trying to soften the reaction from the province by saying, well, no, there's no way that Alberta's owed $334 billion. In actual fact, they actually are owed $334 billion, and it's going to be a fight in court. So that number's supposed to come out at the end of this month, by the way.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would have got ahead of that 6 weeks ahead of time. I got a story for you. This is legit.
Sure.
When Omicron first came out, you can go backwards and look at the news, and literally there was across the ticker on the bottom, there was a sense that there is one case of Omicron being reported somewhere in Southeast Asia. I believe wherever it was in Southeast Asia. Okay. And I turned and I looked at my wife and I said, they're reporting one case of Omicron in Southeast Asia. And then it was 3 weeks down the road, it was everywhere. It was the deal. So can you imagine, realistically, reporting on one case of anything?
Mm-hmm.
Like how ridiculous.
That would be absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I totally.
Absolutely,
but yet,
totally ridiculous.
But
the
they have
one case. So this is what they're doing here. So what's the media done? The media works with the federal government. They've been funded by the federal government. It's not a surprise. They've received at least $700 million from the Trudeau government to give his message. Why don't they want to send us that money? Is because it's a lot of money. Yeah, it's very simple. It's going to money. That kind of money takes away your ability to function the way you're functioning now because it affects your credit rating. It's money that you no longer control. $335 billion is a big deal, considering that Alberta has $25 billion in the bank, $335 billion asset transfer to Alberta.
That's what it would be. Assets
gives us a whole new. It's a whole new playing field. It's absolutely completely different. Yeah. It gives us the opportunity to also invest it in Alberta if it's a good investment, which is something that they won't do with anything that's anti-green, which is the kind of pension fund is totally anti-green. Mm-hmm. So I think basically they're setting us up for a fall. I think that there's no need to accept that. The formula is clear. The formula is very clear. They owe us this money. They know that they owe us this money. I believe there's been 3 actuarial reports done, not just one. Yeah. And they've all come up with the same number. So they're going to have to find an actuary that doesn't, that disputes this. But I mean, if that comes up in court, I can't understand the position being very strong. Yeah. Because, like I said, the formula is very clear. You contribute money to the Canada Pension Fund. What you collect minus what you contributed goes into a place, a safe place for you. This is something Ontario designed, not Alberta. And you get that amount of money plus interest when you decide to leave, if you decide to leave, and that would be your choice. It's very simple. It's not hard at all. So it's not hard for them to figure it out. As a matter of fact, I can understand totally why they don't want to give it up. I can understand why Pierre Poilievre doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that it's not their money. That's really the long and short of it. And let's be clear, this pension plan is a joke. It's absolutely horrendous. For people that have paid the kind of money that they paid into that to get what they're getting is totally ludicrous.
Yeah.
Every pension plan in the world doesn't have a backup like the Canada Pension Plan, whereas if you run out of money, you can print money.
Yeah.
Whereas this pension plan, you get to pay, in my case, $240,000 into it, including my contribution from my store. And then you have to be 85 to get your principal back, based on $1,000 a month payment.
That's exactly right.
With no interest.
Yeah.
No interest being included. It's totally nonsensical.
Yeah.
There's no way we can't do better than that. Absolutely no way. Even at any interest rate, we could do better than that.
And I know there's a lot of statements from the media basically saying, that the CPP is the best run pension plan in the entire world, or maybe in the top 10, that sort of thing. And so, again, it doesn't take much to just do a little bit of digging. So if you're watching this video and you want to actually go down that rabbit hole and actually see what is actually showing, I've got a few things on my sleeve here. So if you actually go to the CPP investments, I'm just going to put that in the comments down. If you go, it actually does show what the fund is. Now, we were told many times that it was 10%, right? It's doing great. It's doing 10%. So they just came out with a new report. And this one here, if you look right on the front page, it says it's 9.1%. Okay, well, it's a little bit less than 10%, but we can round it up to 10%. But look what it is on the fiscal 2025, which is basically coming up. They're making 1%, right? And again, this is not on the whole the whole amount of the investment fund. It's not the $600+ billion that's available to them. Actually, it says right in front of me, $646.8 billion. That's what they're. Let me back up a bit. We've had this conversation before in terms of how the pension fund actually works. So people think that money goes into a little pool of money just specifically for them, and that's not the way it works. I'm actually putting money in for my parents right now because they've long since retired. When I retire, my kids will be putting money into that fund, and that's the money that I'll be drawing out. It's basically a pay as you go, right? And so the amount of money that they're making on this 10% on $646.8 billion, I guess, is $67 billion would be this year if it was at 10%, but it's not. It's at 1%. They're making like $6 billion on this, which, again, for you and me, it definitely sounds like a big amount. But when we're talking about having 40+ million people in Canada, of which how many are actually retirees and how many have contributed to the pension and are able to take out, because that's another factor that a lot of people just assume. I just get a pension no matter what. You have to pay into a pension. The only thing that you get back is old age security, is if you haven't paid into a pension. That is, as soon as you turn 65, you get that money. But it's so insignificant, really. You really do have to take control of your own finances in order for you to retire. So getting back to this whole IPP, the investment board, the CPP, the amount of money that's going in there is not currently being reflected properly by the mainstream media. As a matter of fact, I think they just want to be quiet about this and hope this whole thing goes and gets swept under the rug. But it's groups like us that are trying to educate Albertans on what is actually going down. That is that is what's going to change when we have a referendum on this. And hopefully anybody that's watched this series or has gone up to some of our meetings to talk about this will realize that this is actually a benefit for Alberta.
So what I want to know, Kerry, is what happened to the 40 billion? Like we're showing a $14.4 billion return on 2025. Yeah. Say we're averaging 9.1%. Where'd the 40 billion go? So there's $43 billion
that's right,
missing from
that
number.
Correct. You're right.
So there's $43 billion missing from that number. Where did that money go? That's what I'd like to know. We're looking at a 1% return. Understand that the government is investing money on this kind of money. Also, the reality of the situation is this. They have a really good idea what's going to make money and not, because like it or not, they have inside information. They absolutely have inside information. They know ahead of time what's going to work and what's not going to work for the most part. Mm-hmm. So for them to get a 9.1% rate of return, to me, actually, with the fact that they have all this information available to them, is a very low rate of return. 1% should be investigated as far as I'm concerned. There should be an investigation go into where that $40 billion goes. Yeah. Because if you're only increasing that at 14.4 billion, you could get 5% anywhere on that money. You don't have to spend $5 billion looking after it. Yeah, like I'm sure you could probably get 7 or 8% on that kind of money. So just saying, you wouldn't have to worry about paying all these people, getting all these offices set up. You could just have people looking after that and offer it to people and say, well, if it was a good place, you could invest it in anything. Precious metal right now would be getting you at least the cost of inflation. Yeah. And you know what? It would never be worth nothing. So, I mean, there's simple things that are going on there, but here's the problem. The problem is red straight across the board with government, especially this government that we have now. Yeah. Where the hell does the money go?
Oh, I agree.
Like, we're talking 40-some billion dollars here that belong to Canadian citizens. And here's the other part that shocks me. We're talking about media.
Yeah.
How come the media is not catching that? How come they're not saying, okay, well, here we are?
That was where I was going to go with this, and I'm glad you brought that up ahead of me, because it really is. They have one story that they'll announce to everybody, but they won't go through and talk about this other side of the story.
And that's what's really wrong with our whole system right now. Yeah. That's changed. So let's talk about media for a minute.
Yeah.
Before, one of the prerequisites, one of the requirements of a democracy is a free media. A media that can report what's going on.
Yeah.
That has been their job up until 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
Their job is to report what's going on in government. They're supposed to keep an eye on government. They're the watchdogs. They're the people that find out what's happening.
Yeah.
Since they're being paid by government, they've become a propaganda machine. As we saw, the definition of a propaganda machine is getting the same message out to everybody. And we watched it. You showed it in live time.
I absolutely just showed it.
Absolutely. So the same message to everybody. Yeah. That's the news. So what we've got going on here is a very clear example of that. We're seeing that they're not reporting on the money that's missing, but they are all sharing the same message that, you know what, Alberta shouldn't be getting this amount of money because it's a bad thing. But the real bad thing is the $43 billion that's missing this year. This year, look at that. And everybody's going, so what's happening? What happened there? What didn't happen there?
Yeah.
But so they're telling us, keep your hands off our pension. However, they're showing us that they're not keeping our hands off our pension. They're doing exactly what they're telling us not to do or what they don't want us to do. Mm-hmm. So I just don't understand where the media is in all this. I'd like to speak to somebody who will want to defend that position. Like, why are they not looking into that?
Yeah, that's very true. We have someone online that will definitely be able to tell us a little bit more, or maybe have a bit of a comment about that. I'll bring him on. It's Mr. Tanner today. How are you, Tanner?
Oh, hello. Oh, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. I had a schedule malfunction, and so I'm racing to get back here, and I see I jump in right as Mitch is talking about the good stuff, and you.
It's all good. Yeah, it's just even talking about, I don't know if you did see the beginning of it. We were basically just going through some of the media, and it was the same story from CBC, from CTVs, from Global, to the newspapers. They all had the same headline and basically the same text as well, which is that. And so that just kind of shows that this is the message that they're trying to get out to everywhere. And when we talk about the CPPIB and how good they're doing, question mark, you never hear anything about that.
No. So, and you know what else you don't hear? I was, listening to you guys. I was backstage for a while, listening to you guys talk about missing money and so on. And I find it interesting how all of these media companies, very effectively silence how much it costs to run the CPPIB, right? They are silent on the $4+ billion that it costs to run the CPPIB, especially compared to what it cost when it first, came on scene in the early 2000s. The difference is unbelievable, right? You have an increase in salaries, like hundreds of thousands of dollars in increased salaries per person and so on. You have an increase in the number of employees that are working at the CPPIB. You certainly have an increase in the size of bureaucracy. And yet what you don't have, even as costs balloon up to $4+ billion, is an increase in efficiency, right? An increase in trading returns, an increase in the money in your pocket, and an increase in the overall structure, at least as far as again, efficiency is concerned with the CPPIB, right? It's the opposite. You have a stagnating organization that just spends more and more and more money while earning returns that are, on the surface on par with others. And so the CPPIB isn't this unbelievably efficient machine that is so careful to not waste any money, right? On the contrary, if we could see how much of our taxpayer money went towards salaries and other areas to operate the CPPIB, I think we would be much less interested in seeing that organization continue the way it has been.
Mm-hmm. So where's the audits? So my question is, where are the audits?
Yeah.
Where are the audits to everything? We've got a government that's basically stopped, dead cold in its tracks, because we can't get financial information from the government. Yeah. Prime Minister Trudeau said that would set a dangerous precedent. I absolutely believe him. It would set a dangerous precedent, but for who? It would set a dangerous precedent for them. So just saying, why can we not get an audit to see where this $4.1 billion is going? Why can we not get an audit on the CPP for the last 3-4 years? I'd be 100% open to that. I'm sure it wouldn't cost anywhere near $4.1 billion to do an audit. But I'll bet you it would yield massive results compared to what they're getting now. Where does this money actually go?
Right.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. It circulates. Once it's created, it circulates. It doesn't go away. So that money is somewhere. For them to tell us that it only 1% is what they realized after all those people did all that work and invested all that money. But yet, Tana, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Mark Carney trying to pull $50 billion out of that fund? What's the fee that they charge to manage that money? Is it about 1.5%?
Yeah, right. It's a good question. So firstly, with the audits, the CPPIB, if you ask them that same question, would say, oh, we are transparent, right? We do have audits. And those audits are presented to the minister, the federal minister, and so on in question. Now, of course, the problem with the audits is that the audits themselves aren't very transparent, right? They give us a very incomplete picture as to what the CPPIB is investing in and what the managers that they use are investing in, and so on and so on. And then they'll reply, oh, yeah, well, we have to be careful with what we tell the public, because if we let them know of all of our investments and know them in detail, then we'll have investors who want to pull out of the system entirely. Now, I'm not quite satisfied with that response, right? I don't think we have near enough transparency in the process as it is. I think a lot of the funds that are being invested need to be scrutinized much more carefully than they are right now. And I want to ensure that the CPP is really making as much money and has as much money in the bank, right, as they say they do. That is, we talk about these assets, right, this pile of assets that the CPP has accumulated. The truth of the matter is that isn't cash, right? It's not as though they're sitting on $646 billion of cash. No, instead, that money is tied up, right, in a lot of these investments. And so what they're doing, they're saying, well, if we were to sell the investments today, if we were to offload them, this is how much money we would generate from the sale of those assets. But of course, that's assuming private market figures, which may or may not be true, right? Suppose that you have in your portfolio that you own company X, or you own a portion of company X, and you say company X is worth $10 million today. So if I were to sell it, I would get $10 million in my pocket. Fine, simple. But what if that assessment is wrong? What if the company really isn't worth $10 million? What if it is instead worth, I don't know, $2 or $3 million? All of a sudden, my assessment of how much money I have in the bank, right, is incorrect because my analysis of market values are incorrect. And so we have to be very careful that the assessment that the CPP and its managers are putting on its assets are indeed accurate. A better, like Mitch mentioned, assessment and scrutinization, or more scrutinization, is necessary. Now, as to the next part, right, of the question, Mark Carney and so on. Yes, it's quite true that Carney is asking for billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars from the CPP to help start up a new venture in which Carney's company invests in Canada and Canadian infrastructure. That's correct. Yes, he's fronting a few of the billions himself, or his company is doing so, but most of it is coming, or is supposed to come, from the CPPIB, or the Canadian Pension Plan, which is strange, right? Because Carney is part of Trudeau's inner circle now, and so it seems to me that is classic political interference. That does not seem to me to be entirely objective, right, or honest. And yet Carney is still asking for these billions of dollars to start this new adventure. And Mitch is quite right. That costs money. That is, the managers, the fund managers, will take a portion of that. And even if it is just 1% or 1.5%, that entails huge profit for whatever what is it, Brookfield, or whatever his name is, whatever fund manager is. Yeah.
750 million on 50 billion.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, especially, you know what? That's a net number. Or
yeah.
No, it doesn't have to even be a net number. That he's already got the people in place to do the work.
Yeah.
So that's a absolutely $750 million a year guaranteed growth in his turnover every year.
Yeah. Doesn't seem particularly neutral, as far as I'm concerned.
No.
So Shelley just asked, Carney isn't getting my CPP. Oh my God. Is there any way right now that we can have influence on the CPPIB to say, don't give Carney that money?
No.
Mitch is right. Not really, actually. I mean, you can complain to Trudeau. We can shout and say what's happening is wrong. But, as far as the CPPIB goes, it's not a democratic process. We don't have we don't have influence over how the CPPIB really spends its money. No, not really. The best thing you can do is stand up and say it's wrong, and start your own pension plan that has strict rules attached to it, so that it doesn't allow for political friends to take a significant portion of money from the fund and invest it as they see fit.
So I was just going to ask, so how would Alberta do better? And I think you just said exactly what we need to do. We need, if we're going to bring this back here, it's up to all of us as Albertans to be able to say, these are the rules that we want to have set up for that.
Yeah, you have to make sure that's the way it is, right? You have to make sure that the Alberta Pension Plan does not permit politicians, or as I mentioned, political friends, or those in political inner circles, to have access to any portion of the Alberta Pension Plan's money to invest as they so please, right? We have to remember that Trudeau and Freeland and other members of government have been actively lobbying the Canadian Pension Plan and other big pension plans for some time now to invest more in Canada's infrastructure, because of course fewer and fewer people want to do so. And so Trudeau, in order to keep the mirage of Canada alive, has to increase the amount of spending on those on that infrastructure to try and make it seem like the economy is stronger than not. So here's Carney, who says, I'll do that. Sure, let my firm do so. Just give me 10, well, no, it's not 10, it's 40 or 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, whatever the number is. He says, let the CPP give me that money so I can help you, Trudeau, and I suppose help myself at the same time. That doesn't generate for us the highest possible rate of return. That is not a profit maximizing activity. Rather, we should be investing in whatever investments are best. And if that means doing it overseas, like investing in projects overseas, then so be it, right? If Canada is not if it's not a hospitable place for investment right now, then far be it from our big pension plan to dig itself into a hole by trying to lift up the Canadian economy. That isn't its purpose.
Yeah. And
so
you're
let
right.
me take that back for a minute, Kerry, if I might.
Yeah, please.
There's 338 MPs in Canada.
Yeah.
There's 87 constituencies in Alberta. So the government, realistically, probably going to have 55 or 60 MLAs that represent government. So that's one fifth of 338. So it would be a lot easier for Albertans to access their MLAs than to access MPs.
Oh, absolutely.
And here's the thing: because there's so few of them compared to MPs, because you're in a concentrated area, you literally can control your backyard, and that is what is going to make this successful. What we need to do is have smaller government. By having smaller government, you have to be able to manage it in your own backyard and make a difference, which we can do, which we've proven we can do. And so therefore, it is 100% more beneficial to have that here than it would be to have that there, no matter how you slice it. There's no way that you can possibly tell me that the other way is going to be better in any way, shape, or form. And
well, the other thing,
if they're taking it, that's something else that we have to look at too.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I've seen on the media, I can't call that up right immediately, but if there's $600 billion right now in the current assets, and they give us half, or even let's just say they give us 200, right? The media has basically portrayed it that money would not be getting the same rate of return in Alberta for two reasons. Number one, because they're just going to fund all those Alberta oil and gas projects with that money. That's what I've read and seen, right? And likewise, they're always thinking about the boom bust echo. If you remember that whole that book too, about there's a boom that's going to happen, and it could be with oil and gas, and then it busts, and that's just what seems to happen in Alberta. Do you either of you know off the top of your head how many times we've needed either an equalization payment from the federal government, or maybe we didn't pay enough into our pension plan, so we needed a top up from other provinces? Either of you remember any of that or think of that?
No. You have to understand how rich Alberta is.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole problem here. How much oil do we have in the ground? Is it $170 trillion? Is that the number?
Well, it's a ridiculous number. I know. Yeah,
you have to understand how that's 170,000 billion. Just understand it costs us $66 billion a year to run our government right now.
66 billion. Well,
then that's got nothing to do with the forestry, the mining, the agriculture, all the stuff that's here. Alberta is fantastically rich.
Yeah.
And that's why Alberta is being raped by the federal government every year. We overpay, $20 to $25 billion a year. We pay more than we receive back from the federal government. Yeah. And we're by far the province that contributes the most. And Quebec's getting like $20 billion a year back from equalization payments, but yet they get to not put in their biggest industry, which is Hydro-Quebec. So honestly, what's happening is that the numbers have to be changed. I don't think that's sustainable forever. I don't think Albertans will put up with it for much longer, nor should they. But the reality is that 337 billion or 335 billion is money that belongs to Alberta based on their formula. That number has to come back. We can control it here. We will be much better off. The country may not be as well off, but again, remember, they can print money. So it's not going to affect their pension in one way, shape, or another. And really, we can do much better on our own.
So even if there was 600 billion and we yanked it out, again, we're kind of going off topic, but I think it's worth a conversation. We get 300 billion out of it. So there's still 300 plus billion left back in the Canada Pension Plan. Tanner, what is your take on how long would that money be sustainable, or basically being able to draw down on that without affecting any part of Canada in terms of either a top up by 1% or having to invest it elsewhere. That's still a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Well, so suppose that Alberta receives its full amount, right? What it is, what commentators and so on believe we're owed, which is north of course, $300 billion. Like, according to the assessment of other economists, right, that will, for other Canadians in the country, increase their CPP contributions by about 1%-ish. Now, again, it doesn't have to. It's just that the CPP has within it, or built within it, a what would you call it? Like a little shock absorber, right? So that if there is a large disruption to the system, like Alberta pulling out what it is owed, then it doesn't actually have to increase, right, its contribution rates. That shock absorption is built into the CPP right now. But if you want to maintain that shock absorption, that size of spring, basically, then the CPP would have to, right, increase its contribution rates by 1%, right? Alberta is not the issue, right? Alberta isn't the problem, right? We're financially, we're in an excellent position compared to many others across the country, and all the more so if we have our own Alberta Pension Plan and receive that money which is owed to us, right? The demographics work out in our favor. So at least with this particular question, that isn't a concern. Instead, it's the rest of Canada, depending on how badly they want that shock absorption, and depending on how much money Alberta is given by the Canadian Pension Plan, then their contribution fees will have to increase by 1% or so. But that shouldn't make Albertans feel bad, right? That isn't our fault. That isn't a consequence of our greed or our selfishness, right? Instead, we're doing what's best for our people. We're doing what's best for our province, and we shouldn't be upset about that, and we shouldn't be made to feel guilty about that, right? Not at all. Not at all.
That's true. Yeah. Any comments on that? I think we've lost Mitch again. No,
I'm here. I got you. No, I got no comment on it.
Okay. So here's another question we've seen time and time again, and Shelley, just because she's been commenting quite a bit. Thank you so much. Can we just stop paying into the CPP?
No, it's a good question, and it's an honest question, and it's it's a good question, but the answer is no. Yeah. The law has been written, it's been cemented in Canada for decades now, and we can't just stop paying into CPP. No, you can,
unless you own your own business.
Yes, that's right. There are exceptions, right? Where you have if you own your own business, you can opt out of paying into CPP. That's correct and accurate. But other than that, all employees have to pay.
But then again, if you're not paying into CPP, then you're not going to be able to withdraw as much later on, right?
That's correct.
But you could take that money and invest it somewhere else.
You could, absolutely. Right? Yes, you could.
Yeah. So by me not investing my money somewhere else, literally probably cost me $800,000 based on what I've paid. Like literally cost. Sure. If you break it down at 5% interest, what I've paid as compared to what I'm receiving was an $800,000 swing. So we could do better is the point of that. The point of that is if I had known when I was a young man what I know now, I would be, of course, $800,000 richer, which would be very nice.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So again, the topic that we wanted to stick on, but I knew it wouldn't stay because we always go on these tangents, and it's great because there's so much to talk about when it comes to pension. Is we were talking about the media, we were talking about mainstream media, we were talking about CBC and all etc. But I did want to give a shout out. I do want to give a shout out to just give me a second to call this up, to Western Standard. They actually did an article on us just this past week. Jonathan Bradley went through, and he basically, so if there's any complaint I have to have about Jonathan, because I know Jonathan, is I wish he had actually contacted us directly and had a quote from us or something like that, as opposed to just going on to the website and pulling off a lot of this information, which is fine, because I mean, that's the reason why it's on the website, so that people can get educated and take it and learn. But it's great that he went through and talked about it. But it was about one of these videos that we ended up posting on the website. And we're going to do a lot more of these videos because we've got some things going down in the next little bit that we want to get people educated on. And it's just a really quick way of getting the information out. You know, people are short attention span theater, right? 30 seconds. Give me something that I can digest within 30 seconds. That's all the time I have, because then I got to go and make pasta or whatever it is. They only have a certain amount of time to do it. And these little videos are certainly ones that are good. And as of right now, this particular one's not posted on the website, but it is on social media. So you can go and take a look at it and just learn a little bit more about this. I think I might be able to play it. I don't think you can hear it. I don't think you can. That's one of the glitches with using StreamYard, is that I actually have to open something in a separate window, and it takes a little bit of effort to do. But you can definitely go on there through our social media, Alberta First Pension. On X, it's AB First Pension. And again, you can always just go to our website and find out all the links on that. Right at the bottom, you scroll all the way down, you can see our social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube as well for a lot of these videos. So again, if the Western Standard wants to get a hold of us again and maybe even have a bit of an interview, I'm sure Mitch doesn't have time to do that. But it would be great to have that, right? And if any of the other independent media that we do follow and support, True North, Rebel News, anything like that, as well as if CBC wants to call us and do an interview with Mitch, I'm sure Mitch would just be pleasantly surprised. Never mind actually able to do it.
I have actually done interviews with CBC about other things. I did an interview with CBC about guns and gun rights.
Okay,
that.
Yeah,
and it went fairly well, actually, to tell you the honest to God truth. Surprisingly enough.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, please put in the comments three question marks and put your question in. That way I can flag it. I'm going to call this one up right here. Iris says Canada's legislation mandates that private pension plans must continue paying a pension to the beneficiary for life. Why does the CPP only pay only a small portion of the spouse's pension? Why does CPP not follow the rules for private pensions?
Good question.
That way they get to keep more of the money.
Yeah,
it's pretty much simple. That's exactly what it is.
Is that what?
I mean, if you can give me another reason.
Well, not really, except the CPP is not a private pension, right? It's an open pension. It's a different style of pension than what you might participate in with your employer. So it's not as though with the CPP, you send money to your pension plan all your life, and then that pension plan accumulates for you a private sum of money, and then that money is yours. And then if you pass away, it's your spouse's, just like it is with other assets that you have under your name. CPP doesn't work like that, right? Instead, it's this social insurance plan is really what it is. And you as an individual don't get a sum of money, rather you're just part of the pile. So when you pass away, you don't receive all of that, or your widow or widower doesn't receive all of that money you've accumulated, because it's not your private pile. Instead, it's everyone's pile. It's different.
Yes. Could we change that if we brought it into Alberta? Could we? Would it make sense to do that?
Well, I like the idea of it. I think that would be it would much more closely resemble a pension plan than it would what does right now. You can't really call it a pension plan right now, right? It's really looks much more like a social insurance plan. That's what the CPP is. That would be for bureaucrats to debate and discuss, and lawyers to hang up themselves in court with, because some would say if you did so, some would say it would violate the rules of the Canadian Pension Plan Act. Others would say no, it wouldn't. It would be a battle of the courts.
Because really,
the problem with that is that if that happened, it would make everybody considerably better off, especially 2 or 3 generations down the road.
Yeah.
Everybody would have much more money. I can't understand why we couldn't aspire to that. I think government with less money is a good thing, and people with more money is a good thing. I don't know if everybody on this podcast would agree with that, but I think that it would be a much better system for everybody concerned. But right now, we're seeing live evidence that that's not what the federal government wants. The federal government is actually on track to make us less wealthy, not more wealthy. So therefore, it would never happen with the CPP for sure. We understand that. So therefore, it's a real compelling reason to bring that pension plan back here to Alberta so we can actually change the rules so that we, the people that have paid into that pension fund, can actually get a realistic pension fund and earn more and keep more.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Anita asks, what happens to the money when someone, such as a single person, passes away before the age of 65?
It vanishes.
That's what happens.
It carries it's right. Your action, your emote is correct. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's it.
So, but again, if we brought it here and we could change the rules on it, because I mean, that's the other thing that we really want to put out to everybody and make sure that they understand that if it's sitting out in Ottawa through the CPPI investment group board, whatever they call themselves now, if it's sitting out there, we really have no say on how anything is managed or what changes can possibly happen other than going through parliamentary legislation, blah, blah, blah. But if it was in Alberta, it's closer to home and we could actually have that influence to say, you know what, there's enough people here that want to have a singles benefit when they if they pass. And then how does that work, right? And I think it'll only happen if it's here in Alberta, because if it stays out in Ottawa, there's no way this could ever possibly happen.
No, that's correct. It'll never change in Ottawa. That's correct. Ottawa loves the status quo.
Yeah. And then, so here's another question. Shelley, obviously, is a newcomer, and that's great. Thank you so much, Shelley, for joining us. The question is, so would we pay to the CPP and also pay to an Alberta pension plan?
Right. No, just the one. Either it's APP or CPP. Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why we would be getting the assets from the Canada Pension Plan, is then everything is now in Alberta. So then you pay into APP, and if you're getting a check from CPP and you're now in Alberta, then you end up getting a check from the Alberta Pension Plan. That's the way it would work.
That's right.
Yeah. Vicky has a comment here too. There is zero possibility of change if we stay with people. There's a possibility of change with an Alberta pension plan. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, I just wanted to reiterate that this is what the media is trying to portray. And as we saw, they have one narrative, one message going out to everybody across Canada. But next week, I think what I'd like to explore is social media and social media influencers, and talking about there are so many social media people out there that claim that they know best, and really all they're doing is reiterating what they saw on CBC or Global or at CTV, and we just saw on our screens that same message over and over again. So I think I'd like to explore that a little bit more, because a lot of people are not getting their news off of the mainstream media anymore. I'm definitely one of those that, although I look at the news, I pretty much look at the independent news sources. I look at social media, and really because it's not government funded and it's not heavily influenced by that government money. And to me, it just seems to be a more fair way of looking at the news. And so despite the fact that we've talked a little bit about media and that, I want to talk a little bit more next week about social media, unless we happen to get the CPPIB number from the federal government, and then I want to talk about that. But I don't know if we'll actually get that before the end of the month. It'll be close.
I really would be surprised if they give us a number at all.
Yeah.
I think once they give us a number, then they have to go down the path of proving it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last thing they want, is to try to have to prove that number.
Yeah.
And the other, I got a comment. So if we're really getting 9.5% interest and we only got $14.1 billion, that means we only have $160 billion in that fund.
Oh,
based on those numbers.
That is true.
Being in retail, I understand being able to value my own inventory, because that's something we can do.
Yeah.
So the government can literally pull a number out of the sky and say, you know what, this is what this is worth. and put it on a piece of paper without having to validate it, because that's just the rules. Even those are my rules.
That's right. That's a very interesting way of looking at it, and I certainly wouldn't have thought about that prior to this episode. So may have to investigate a little bit further. So again, we're doing 10 of these episodes. We aim to have them completed before the UCP AGM, not because we're in cahoots or anything with the UCP, not at all. We are definitely grassroots. We don't get funded by anybody other than ourselves in order to do this education. So definitely grassroots. If you like what we're doing, please consider donating. It doesn't go to line our pockets or anything like that. It goes towards educational programs, meetings, and we're also looking at doing some big events, certainly at the beginning of next year, that if you're willing to be a sponsor or make a sizable donation, please get a hold of us, and we can tell you what's going on and how you can be involved. And you can definitely go to info@albertafirstpension.ca and send us a message about that, and we will gladly get back to you. And so with that, I think that's all I really wanted to mention today about the media. And then, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to go out and just do a search on Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever search engine you want. Go on YouTube, do a search like I did at the beginning. Just put in Alberta Pension Plan or Alberta First Pension, or put in Canada Pension, and just see what comes up. And I think that's part of the equation here, is that people need to not only be educated and help. We're spreading the word in terms of educating, but I think people need to educate themselves as well. And if people do educate themselves, it's going to open up a whole whack of wow. And I think that's what people need to do, is actually say, so this is really what's going on. This is really where my money's going. If I invested the same amount of money that's coming out as basically just a tax, if I invested the same amount of money and going out there, I would be in so much better position, but I can't because of the laws that have been enacted. So how do we change those laws? How do we get things to change? Well, this is one step. This is definitely a step that if we bring it back into Alberta, we can make those changes as Albertans. And you know what? I'm still a proponent of saying, if it happens in Alberta, it can happen anywhere. It can happen in BC, happen in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, wherever you want. If you are watching and you're not even in Alberta, you can investigate that a little bit further. So any last comments from you gentlemen?
No, we're all about leading. We're okay with leading the way. There's no problem there.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming out. And we will see you in a couple of weeks when we're doing the last one of our town halls. And then even if we don't get the number in from the government by the next town hall, we will do another show after that. So even if it's in November or December, because it's definitely worth the conversation to come back and say, so this is the number they came back with, and how much is it true, right? So actually, you know what? There's two other questions I'm going to come up with here too. Iris asks, if we can't reach the number of required supporters, will the referendum on an APP not happen? So we're looking for 270,000. Although even in a previous episode, if you watch that episode, the actual number is 10% of roughly 3 million electoral votes. So that basically means we need 300,000. Well, 270,000 is pretty close to 300,000. I think if we got 270, it would probably still fly. But what if we didn't reach that number of supporters? Mitch, what do you think would happen?
Well, it depends. I think, there's two things that can happen. Yeah. The government can legislate to change a rule that Kenny put in, that they need a referendum, so they can do that, and see that is a very large benefit to Alberta, so that they could say, well, you know what, we're going to act in the interests of all Albertans and bring us here. Yeah. Or they could make us go get the rest of the numbers, which, I mean, is doable. Right now, it's all about money. The more money we have, it's costing us about 15 to 20 cents a signature. So if you want to do the math, I think we can get to that number. But what we need to do is raise the funds. We're going to get flat out on that after the AGM. I believe that the AGM has been a bit of a distraction based. I'm a CHR. I've got lots of other things going on besides the pension fund. So for me, once we get past the AGM, the rest of the world kind of slows down, and we can focus on Alberta Pension, which I think is absolutely necessary. I think Alberta needs Alberta Pension for its own sovereignty, meaning that we will be able to better take care of our backyard if we have that kind of an asset, and it belongs to us. And it's out of the control of the federal government, which is right now flat out attacking Alberta.
That's right. So the last thing I want to bring up is Alberta Stronger says, "Hi, Mitch. How is your door knocking campaign going? Door knocking face-to-face is important in my humble opinion, has been extremely effective in my experience, having knocked on approximately 70,000 doors all over this province of Saskatchewan within a 4-year period." So not only were we asking for donations, but volunteer. If you have the time to do it, then by all means do it. Mitch, do you want to make a comment on?
I haven't knocked on doors since the election. Really, I've been busy doing town halls for this. So if you count that as knocking on doors, I probably knocked on 55 or 60 doors, but had between 50 and 300 people, 400 people at every event.
That's true too. Yeah. So, but yeah, it definitely will. We do have a group of volunteers. So there's kind of we need to get the 270,000, 300,000 contact names and information, and then once we get that, and we say, okay, now we're dropping, it's not really the writ, but I guess we'll be dropping the hat to say we now have 90 days to collect the actual wet signatures. That's when we definitely need 400 or 500 people across the province to go out and actually get those signatures. And there are volunteer meetings going on right now. I think they do it once a week, and they're coming up with that strategy to say, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing this, we'll have people that are knocking on physical doors in order to get people to do this because we have the contact information. Or we may say, you know what, we're going to be meeting at a church or a community center or a mall and sending the information to say, we're coming out this Saturday, please come out and sign. And then that'll be another way that we can possibly get the 300,000 wet signatures that will be required within 90 days. So that's kind of where we're looking at. So again, thank you very much, gentlemen. And for everybody that's watching, thank you so much for your support, for watching and sharing. And we will see you guys again in 2 weeks on October 29th. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you guys again.
Okay, good night.